All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Faye Nemmer. I am the CEO and founder of the MENA American Chamber of Commerce. In light of Sheetz' aggressive entry into the state of Michigan, we are adamantly challenging the pervasive introduction of up to 80 Sheetz gas stations into the Michigan market. And it'll be mostly concentrated in the Tri-County area, so that's what brings us together here today. As you may be aware, Michigan's ratio of gas stations per capita is already higher than the national average. To that end, our contention with Sheetz does not emanate from prohibiting competitiveness in the market. We're not anti-competition, we're not anti-fair trade. That's not our messaging here today. What we are against is anti-unfair competition and dubious business practices, which Sheetz has been engaged in, as demonstrated in multiple planning commission meetings, council meetings that we've attended. And most recently, they have engaged in discriminatory practices as well. For these reasons, Sheetz is not welcome in the state of Michigan. And they are not welcome in our neighborhoods. In recent Michigan implementations, which constitutes Sheetz' first expansion since 12 years, Sheetz is using a strategy of grossly underpricing their fuel in the first 6 months of operations as a means to undercut their competition and to edge them out of the market. We have witnessed this in recent history with Circle K, and they did not last in Michigan. They left behind vacant and dilapidated buildings, and the same will happen with Sheetz. And that's what we're here to discuss today, to make sure that our community, our legislatures, our municipalities are aware of this forthcoming concern, and it's more of a long-term concern that we're communicating. Sheetz has shielded itself by utilizing a acquisition process that is problematic. They have retained the largest zoning and planning law firms in the state of Michigan, so that they're preventing gas station owners and fuel suppliers from being able to access that same legal avenue. So those law firms are conflicted from being able to represent you in these matters. They are also, they have retained 3 lobbying firms, one at the state level, one at the local level, and one just to be utilized as a backup. They have also retained a public relations firm to give them positive press. So if you see some of the positive articles about Sheetz in the news, that's intentional, that's by design, that's being paid for. It's important to also note that Sheetz claims to bring new jobs. They fail to mention that their business model would simply cannibalize. So their value proposition is that they're bringing new jobs, they're creating jobs, but they're also incrementally adding revenue to the state. That's not accurate. They're cannibalizing existing revenue from gas station owners that are here. They're cannibalizing revenue from existing fuel suppliers as well, and reallocating your employees into their gas stations. That's not job creation, and that's not revenue creation. That's cannibalizing of existing revenue, so we're going to be status quo as an economy in the state of Michigan. That's something that we take issue with when there is a misleading value proposition that they're putting forward. Furthermore, Sheetz' operational model bypasses Michigan's local economy and by entirely sourcing all of their products from out of state. So the local supply chain is impacted, whether it's your local vendors, your local wholesalers, your restaurant operators, your fuel suppliers, all of them are impacted, negatively impacted by Sheetz procuring and sourcing all of these products from outside of the state of Michigan. So the loss of these local connections would drain millions of dollars from Michigan's local economy. Another pressing concern is Sheetz' 24/7, 365 model. When you combine food and alcohol and in concert with a 24/7, 365 model, you're inviting increased crime. You're inviting a more problematic safety concern for that locality and for that neighborhood. In addition to those issues, they've also had a track record of environmental issues with the EPA, where their underground tanks have been known to cause leakage into the underground reservoirs. This company has also come under scrutiny for discriminatory employment practices against African American communities, and which raises further questions about their commitment to diversity. They're currently in litigation with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission because of their hiring practices. And speaking of discrimination, what brings us here today is the fact that the city of East Point, there was a case of discrimination that's impacted one of our gas station owners, and he's with us here today. The city of East Point declined his application on the basis that within a 3-mile radius, there's a high concentration of gas stations. But by the same token, a year thereafter, they approved a Sheetz gas station in the same locality. So again, we take issue with what are the circumstances that led to the approval of one case, one plan versus another. When you have a corporation that's approaching the municipality versus a local independently owned gas station owner, there's evidently an inherent unfair competitive advantage that a corporation holds when compared with an independent owner. So that is something that we're taking into consideration today to establish a legal fund to be able to pursue legal measures against municipalities, not just the city of East Point, but others that we're witnessing are bending the rules and not following their own ordinances, not implementing their own ordinances when it comes to the approval of the Sheetz gas stations. So we are witnessing preferential treatment and certain questionable business practices, even from the municipalities where these plans are coming for review. Today, we're committed to working with our legislative partners and the broader Michigan community to ensure that this issue receives the attention it deserves. In order to pursue legal measures, we are, as I stated, establishing a legal fund to pursue a discrimination case against the city of East Point and any other municipality that is following suit, whether it's discriminatory practices or simply not following their own ordinances. And that's the reason that we're holding today's press conference as well as today's panel discussion to ensure that we're able to slow them down and prevent them from continuing this very aggressive expansion effort in the state of Michigan, which is predominantly concentrated in Southeast Michigan. And that is a significant impact to a lot of us with a projected 40% decline in revenues to existing business owners. So who here can withstand a 40% decline in their revenues year over year? That's something that is part of our advocacy efforts to ensure that that does not happen to our local business owners and to our local fuel suppliers, as well as the entire supply chain that would be impacted. So with that, I want to call Hassan Nasser. He has a brief statement to say, and then we'll go into our panel discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hassan Nasser, and I'm here today to raise awareness of the serious challenges Sheetz gas stations pose to business owners like myself and others in the community. As it stands with narrow margins in owning gas stations, many of us are struggling to keep up with their goals. If Sheetz approves new Sheetz gas stations locations in Michigan, it will strain our ability to compete and could drive many owned stations to close down the road entirely. Sheetz aggressive expansion in Michigan has already been facing resistance, and it's critical and very important that we stay organized and keep up with a strategy to address their practices that it will inflict in our community. I want to thank everyone for coming in today. Special thanks to Mr. Sam Baidoun, Wayne County Commissioner, and special thanks to Faye Nimmer, CEO of MENA Chambers of Commerce, for her help and support. I'm hoping that with the Chamber's help, we will protect the small businesses that is the backbone of the local economy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Attorney Ali Barrow with the Barrow Law Firm. I welcome you all today. Thank you for joining us in this very important press conference. The purpose of today is to facilitate and encourage your opinions and your concerns, specifically with what we're engaging today, which is Sheetz gas station. So without further ado, I'd like to give you our esteemed guests and panelists. We have Mr. Tariq Turfi, and we have Ms. Cindy Victor. I'd just like to take a moment for them to introduce themselves, starting with Ms. Cindy Victor.
Hello, I'm Cindy Victor. I'm the principal of the Victor firm. I've been a lawyer for 43 years now, primarily in commercial real estate, representing businesses solely, not municipalities, and dealing with zoning and planning. So zoning and planning issues are the bulk of what we do.
Mr. Turfi?
Hello everybody, nice to meet you all. My name is Tariq Turfi. I'm from the Hamoud and Dakhlala Law Group. I don't quite have 43 years, but hope to get there one day. Our firm specializes in commercial litigation with a strong footprint in commercial transactions as well. So a lot of business deals that we've done in the gas station industry, both on the supply side, on the jobbership side, and we've taken a look at a lot of these issues that even affect starting the business, such as the planning and the zoning, and some of the challenges that arise from there.
Thank you very much. We're going to begin today's press conference. I will ask a question to our esteemed guests, and they will have 3 minutes to provide an answer. At the conclusion of today's press conference as well, we will allocate at least 15 minutes to our audience members, and again, to engage your thoughts, your opinions, and any questions you may have. Starting with Mr. Turfi, a general question that I'm sure all of us here have is, what are the practical effects of a large corporation such as Sheetz coming into and entering the gas station market? How will the entry of Sheetz affect the entire supply chain of local gas stations and fuel suppliers?
So Faye touched about the local supply chain and how it is impacted when you have a large corporation that enters the market. And when these corporations come, they bring with them a vertical integration of both the supply of the fuel and the goods and then the sale. And in our community, we're blessed with members of the community that are part of each level of that supply chain. So we have people that are on the ground as the individual dealers. We have people that are in the middle as the jobbers. We even have the supply side for all of the goods that are sold inside of the store. When you get a Sheetz that comes in, you now have 3 levels of business that is affected negatively, and that essentially wipes out a whole line for all of these suppliers, jobbers, and dealers from ever competing. And with the size of a corporation like Sheetz, you have competitive pricing that truly, it's really hard to fight when you're a quote-unquote mom-and-pop shop. So one of the important factors of considering corporations like Sheetz coming in, how's it going to affect me, but how's it going to affect my supplier? How's it going to affect my downstream and my upstream business partners? It's all going to be affected, and it's not just the people in this room, it's the people that you're buying from, it's the people that you're selling to. So to take an all-encompassing look at the effects, you really have to look at every aspect of the supply chain and understand that it will be negatively affected.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turfi. We're going to take the next question to Ms. Cindy Victor, and perhaps you could even give us an anecdotal story if you have one. What are some examples that you have witnessed of municipalities bending the rules or perhaps not following their own ordinances and approving Sheetz locations? And perhaps if you have maybe a case that you'd like to share with us as well.
Thank you. So one of the things that we do when we are presenting a case to a planning commission or trying to get a variance from a zoning board of appeals, or then going the next step to a city council or a township board of trustees, is to make sure that our clients have followed all of the ordinances so that we meet all of the A, B, and C. The state has set standards. And for just about every gas station, as I'm sure all of you have experienced, you have to be in a certain kind of zoning, and you have to usually get something called a special land use. A special land use is actually regulated by a state zoning statute, which says that you have to have 7 things that you match up on, and a planning commission is supposed to go through each and every one of those to make sure that any applicant, whether I'm putting in a gas station, a Burger King, a medical office, any kind of operation, has to match up with the ordinances and to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. So what I do when I go and look at approvals or considerations is to look to see, has there been compliance with the ordinances? Has City A or Township B followed the same application of their zoning ordinance to Sheetz as they have to other entities? And I have seen that they have not, that there are instances where there have been the requirements for the special land use, they've skipped over them, they haven't required Sheetz to match up in the same way that they have other businesses. We mentioned a business earlier that applied for a gas station in a locality and met all of the requirements and was told there are too many gas stations in that area. Boom, a year later, Sheetz shows up and it's okay, same gas station, same thing, and yet not only do they vocalize it differently, but then they also don't make them strictly go to the 7 requirements for a special land use, including whether or not it fits in and is something that is wanted and desirable in the community. For those of you who have gone to some of the planning and city council meetings and things on the Sheetz gas stations, you have tons of people in the community come out and they present actual real examples of how it will impact them. And all of that has been ignored. So I've seen, as I said, I've been, this is my day job, watching what municipalities do. And it's just amazing to me that they have green-lighted Sheetz in a way that would never happen for anyone in this room. And that's not right. That's not how we're supposed to have equal protection under the 14th Amendment. That's not equal protection.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. I'd like to ask you a follow-up, and this goes to perhaps the stem of the original question. Do you have any cases or familiarity where Sheetz has been approved to open a gas station, whereas in other individuals who applied to open up a gas station as well have been denied, perhaps?
I've seen it in 2 communities. I've seen it in East Point and I've seen it in Ypsilanti Township, where when I look at the minutes of the planning commission meetings for that business, the business who applied and was denied, and the business who was approved, there were different standards that were applied, and there was no reason for what we call disparate treatment. That they were, I hate to throw legal terms around, they were what we call under constitutional tort law, similarly situated. In Michigan, like just about every other state, you can't sue the government. They have governmental immunity. So you can't sue them if you think they misrepresented something to you, or they lied to you, or they have immunity against that. The only way that you can bring an action against a municipality is through the mechanism of a federal statute, 42 U.S.C. section 1983. And that says that if you're deprived of your constitutional rights by a municipality, you can bring a lawsuit. We call that a constitutional tort. So if you are not treated the same as other people, that's a deprivation of your 14th Amendment rights. And it can be based on the fact that they're of one race or religion or national origin and you're of a different one. Or it can be just that you're the same, but you create what's been known as a class of one, which has been U.S. Supreme Court law for the last 30 years. So the same thing too, if certain processes are followed for you and you have to meet certain requirements, but for Sheetz it was not, that's a deprivation of due process. We have 2 kinds of due process. We have procedural, we have substantive. If they treated a non-Sheetz applicant in a way that's arbitrary and capricious compared to how they treated Sheetz, that's a deprivation of substantive due process, also part of your 14th Amendment. Also, if you tried to talk at a meeting and they shut you down and wouldn't let you talk, that's a deprivation of your First Amendment rights. You have a right to petition the government. So we used that section 1983 as a way to bring forward constitutional tort claims.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. I'd like to ask the next question to Mr. Turfy. As many of us are aware, there is perhaps some price gouging with Sheetz, and as we are aware, they're accused of underpricing fuel to edge out competitors. What suggestions do you have for a local network of dealers and fuel suppliers to compete with Sheetz and other large corporations in the marketplace?
So the reality of Sheetz's pricing strategy is all well too known. I don't have to explain it, especially in this room. They have the buying power, they have the purchasing power, they can undercut prices and eat short-term losses in order to out-survive some of the local operators that are in the area. The real answer to that is to establish a collective. I mean, inside of this room here, and we all know, one or two people in the industry that are not here, there's a lot of influence, there's a lot of people that have key positions inside of this Southeast Michigan gas station community, to where establishing a collective, that's how you compete with Sheetz in the marketplace. The classic example is a gas station owner or an operator that's either exiting the business or wants to retire or wants to go on to something else. When they put up the for sale sign, the strategy for the community, the strategy for the business leaders in our area should not be to compete with Sheetz, it should be to be Sheetz. Because if this community turns around, buys those gas stations, establishes that purchasing power, you're keeping it all in our backyard. We're not giving somebody else an opportunity to come inside of here and undercut us with competitive corporate pricing, put in all of these different types of business practices that dominate the competition. That collective purchasing power is truly what will make a difference because it gives you a chance in the marketplace. Otherwise, if Sheetz is able to win at the local level, they obtain favorable zoning, they obtain favorable decisions on the planning commission, there's going to be no stopping how low they will go in order to wait out the local gas stations just so they die one by one, and then they're left with exactly what they came for, which is a dominating market share. So, what you can envision or some type of practical solutions that you've seen in other industries is the key players, the business leaders in the market, they set aside their differences, they come together. You can establish buying collectives, real property collectives, even collectives on the supply side to keep the gas stations. If it's not necessarily the same owner-operators, find owner-operators through a collective, through a joint effort in order to make sure that the stations do not go to Sheetz. And I want to make clear, it's not just one big corporation. There are several that are popping up throughout this whole country, and they're right behind Sheetz, and they're going to study this closely. And if you think Sheetz might fail in one area or another, there's another 2 or 3 or 4 mega corporations that are waiting to knock down the door in the state of Michigan. And unless or until there's a collective buying power with its roots in our community, with its roots in truly maintaining the small business strategy, the big corporation is eventually going to have the money and the resources to wait it out until these small businesses fall. But what I will say on the positive side is there is money in this community. There is influence in this community. What there is not is collective. And until the collective approaches and that togetherness strategy gets employed, the real results are going to have to be only on the individualized level. When you have the collective, it truly gives you the opportunity to fight pound for pound and punch for punch against these large corporations like Sheetz.
Thank you, Mr. Turfy. Ms. Victor, one of the primary issues that many individuals are dealing with, especially from the attorney aspect, is a conflict of interest. What people have discovered is that Sheetz has hired Michigan's largest zoning firms essentially to establish a conflict of interest for anyone that wants to fight against Sheetz. Are there legal precedents that could ensure small business owners still have fair access to representation?
I don't know that I would say that there are legal precedents. What Sheetz has done is exactly what Faye had said in her initial address. They planned out a very good strategy from their perspective on how to take over. So they didn't just have law firms, and they didn't just have a press company, relations company, and they didn't have lobbying firms. They also wanted to make sure that they covered their bases so that they wouldn't have much opposition. So yes, it's been represented to me that they have gone to larger law firms and established a relationship with them, so there's a conflict. However, there are other people out there, and if you feel like you want to challenge this, yes, you might not be able to go to ABC large firm or DEF large Detroit law firm, but there are firms in the area that do specialize in zoning and planning that can help you. And so contact Faye, and she'll be able to help you with that. So there isn't precedent, but there are some of us who don't just take money, so there's a conflict.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Mr. Turkey, the next question is, so Sheetz has faced allegations of discriminatory employment practices. As a matter of fact, there is also a federal lawsuit from the EEOC against Sheetz for their discrimination practices. How can these practices be used to dissuade municipalities from improving Sheetz to coming into their communities?
So it's a good question because it is an issue that Sheetz is facing. You mentioned the EEOC lawsuit, but what's most important about individual issues with a company like Sheetz is to put them in context, especially in context with what we're trying to do here today. If the goal, which I believe is a common goal, is to combat Sheetz's entry into our neighborhood and our community markets, now we're looking at individualized challenges, a Sheetz in Taylor, a Sheetz in Ellen Park, a Sheetz in Dearborn, what have you. Each one of those individualized aspects can always be said, hey, well, this corporation has this EEOC complaint, or this corporation also has bad competitive practices. These individualized issues, while they are a stain on Sheetz, look at it from the other perspective. You're going to have local municipalities, planning commissions, zoning commissions, city councils, that are going to be hard pressed to just vote against a large corporation that's going to bring millions of dollars into the community. They're going to rehabilitate a building. They're going to have a nice, big, beautiful gas station and convenience store that's open 24/7. In their eyes, it's a great deal. So to turn around and base your challenge off of, well, they had one EEOC complaint in the past, or one issue with a bad competitive practice in the past, that's not going to be enough to actually make a difference in the challenge. Now, what we can do as a community is educate ourselves about what an EEOC claim is, what proper employment and hiring practices are, because then we can save from the pitfalls of something like what Sheetz is doing. But to get back to the answer to your question, using Sheetz as individual issues needs to be only part of the solution. It needs to be part of the plan when you're going to fight Sheetz entering into a local market. And it could be a big deal, but it also could not be when you look at it in the grand scheme of things.
Thank you, Mr. Turkey. Ms. Victor, how can municipalities ensure transparency in zoning and planning processes when Sheetz has retained multiple top law firms to fast track their approvals?
I'm going to answer that question somewhat differently. And this may sound somewhat cynical, but then remember that 43 years thing. Municipalities tend to do whatever that panel is confronted with at the time. And if they have someone like Sheetz that has top law firms, and they're slick and they're able to slide things by, and they're able to get them to wink and nudge on some of the requirements, then that's what happens. So where do we get transparency? Where do we get clearness? There isn't, again, I know I sound cynical, but I don't believe that someone's gonna wake up and go, whoa, we're not being transparent, we're not being clear. That's where all of you come in. And I can't stress enough what Mr. Turfy's saying about community and about support and about getting allies. The way to keep municipalities transparent is to keep them transparent by being there, by being the eyes and ears. So when there is a planning commission meeting, those are recorded, they're on TV. Now, the minutes are not gonna reflect anything that's there, but what you have is a 3-hour meeting, or a 4-hour meeting, or a 2-hour meeting that's been televised. And what we do, if we're going to challenge that for any kind of thing, is we get that tape and we have it transcribed. And that's our transcript going further. So what can everybody do? You can go armed with statistics. It doesn't work to just stand up and say, I don't want Sheetz because I think it'll hurt my business. Have statistics like, it's going to affect 40%. There's X number of gas stations in the area. You've turned down 3 other applicants because you said there were too many gas stations, and now you're approving this. Make a record. It's just like being in court. When you're at a planning commission during public comment and you can stand up and talk, make sure you have facts and figures, cite to them, cite your sources, because then that's what we use to go to the next level, to go to a court and say, the planning commission, the city council, whoever acted arbitrarily and capriciously. They didn't consider all of it. So the best way to keep a municipality transparent is to be there, is to watch them. So, democracy dies in darkness. You want to be there to make them stay transparent.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Mr. Turfy, there's an ongoing issue that many people have concerns about, not just small business owners, but actual community residents. One primary issue is the potential increase in crime and the increase in safety issues with having a Sheetz in their community, which caters a 24/7, 365 alcohol sales, which also invites people throughout the night, throughout the day. What are some complications with having such a 24/7, 365 model?
So I started my last answer by touching upon how difficult it might be for a small local city zoning board or planning commission or city council for that matter to oppose such a nice new development that Sheetz has. Ms. Victor touched upon one of the most important aspects, which is the wink and nudge. And when you have crime laws, alcohol ordinances, to go to Mr. Barrow's question, you want to make sure that you don't allow these small local boards and councils to just pass it through the wink and nudge. Because once it gets approved, it's never going back. And at the local level, whether it's zoning or getting business approvals and licenses, you have to make sure that if there's a challenge coming in your competitive market, that the boards actually consider the specific zoning, the specific ordinance related requirements, hours of operation, signage, lighting, noise, all of these matters that all are around the periphery of a topic such as 24/7 alcohol sales. But as long as they're accountable and they're aware that we're aware of those issues and those laws, then it forces the cities to remain vigilant in holding these new developments accountable rather than just passing them through with a wink and a nudge. And again, the cards are stacked against this challenge. You have the big corporation that's coming in with the bright shiny lights. It needs to be forceful. It needs to have a light shine right directly on these laws to make sure they're complied with. Otherwise, you're setting up something exactly for Ms. Victor to challenge in court.
Thank you, Mr. Turfy. Ms. Victor, this question goes directly to you. So Sheetz is claiming to bring new jobs and capital investments to whatever the community they're in. The same promises actually made by Circle K in the past before they abandoned the state and left vacant, blighted buildings behind. How do we address this facade with local municipalities?
I think we have to bring it to their attention because that's exactly it. As Ms. Neera said in the beginning, these are not new jobs. They're your jobs, your people. The money that they're claiming to bring in is the money that you all were making that they're taking from you. As we were chatting before this started, it's not like they're putting this in a place that's a gasoline wasteland where you don't have a gas station 30 miles away, 20 miles away. They're putting it right where there are a number of active, successful gas stations. Why do they want to be there? Because you've made that area successful. So they want your success. They want that area. So while they'll say, well, we're gonna hire 30 people and we're gonna have sales of X, Y, and Z dollars, that's not 30 new people. That's, as they put stations out, those people are unemployed. So there isn't really a net there. How can we bring this? We need to bring this to their attention whenever there is a public hearing. We need to bring this to the attention of our lawmakers, that this is not an addition. This is not like someone coming in with a new business. They're going to bring in a battery making business and create a new entity and a new job and things that weren't here. This isn't a business that used to be in Kentucky and is now relocating to Michigan. This is a business that is cannibalizing, to use that word, what you have built up already to take for itself with non-competitive practices. So we have to bring that to their attention, that these are not these are not positives for the community. The best way you can do that I have found, is visual aids. Take pictures of things like that. If you have pictures of the Circle K, if you have pictures of places that happened, they want to say, oh, this is gonna be great and Sheetz will be here for eternity. We've all seen big companies come in and run out and leave stuff behind that is desiccated businesses. Take pictures and show the planning commission, this is what Circle K looks like now. Remember when you approved this? This is where we're at now. Think about what you're doing, because it's the lure of the shiny, the new, the exciting. Oh wow, this is so cool. It's as if the Southeast Michigan community never had a McDonald's before, and now McDonald's is saying they're gonna come in and put this in. It just sounds exciting, it sounds new, and folks are looking at it without investigating what it really means or the impact on our existing businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Turfy, this question is for you. Given Sheetz' track record of environmental violations, what legal obligations do municipalities have to enforce environmental compliance and prevent potential harm from issues like leaking underground tanks and other environmental hazards?
Well, the short answer and the easy answer to that is it's the law. They're obligated to follow the law. Now, the important answer and the more difficult one to actually put in practice, I think, ties a bow around a lot of what was discussed here on these questions, which is ensuring that we are the watchdog for the cities to make sure that they follow their own laws and they don't make wink and nod exceptions. Because the minute that any of us have ever encountered any type of environmental issue, for example, you can be assured or as confident that the city or the state or the federal government has come barreling down our door to obtain a solution. Now, the same reality has to be for large corporations like Sheetz. It can't be pick and choose. You want to go after the small operators and choose to turn a blind eye to a large corporation whenever the same issues arise. And important to note for that is also history, because history in a business practice also gives these cities an idea of what's to come in the future. So when these businesses are proposed at the various cities in our neighborhoods, in our back doors, it's always good to remind them of the similar corporate practices so that they know to look out for it. And if you don't put something on the radar of these local boards or local township committees, then they will turn a blind eye to it, and that's what can't happen. Otherwise, there'll never be any enforcement.
Thank you very much. Before turning the gavel to the audience, I would actually like to bring an individual up here who is not only a community member, but also a victim of Sheetz's conglomeracy and monopolization of the gas station market. Mr. J. Hammoud, would you like to come up here and give a little story of what's happening with your situation?
Hello everyone. My name is Jay Hammoud. I'm with Alcohol Company. I'm an investor. I'm a businessman in the area. I've been in Dearborn for a long time. Me and my brother, we got in a situation of the city of East Point. We purchased a property. It's a bank. It's a good sized property, and we are developer for gas stations. So we bought that property and we did all and everything that it needed to be done regarding the planning and the engineering. And we were kind of like led with the city of East Point that, yeah, okay, you can apply, and things were working good at the beginning. Basically, after a couple meetings with the city and, kind of going through all the condition and then zoning requirement, and then they advised to change the plans, and they had several conditions to change on the plan, and we did that, and we met all the conditions, and it seemed like everything is good. My engineers advised that it shouldn't be a problem. We don't see any problem. From our experience and his experience, we saw that it should be an easy kick. Basically, after we went to the last meeting, the planning commission, we started to get like some, bad, reception from them that they are not happy with the situation, and they are not likely gonna approve it. So at the last meeting, it seems like when I presented the case and I went in front of them, it seems like everybody kind of like shut, like they don't wanna listen, they don't wanna do anything. They based it on the rejection on environmental issue. We came prepared. We told them about the environmental issues and then how these are gonna be handled. They were afraid that we're gonna cause contamination in the area, and then the smell and odor and all these kind of conditions. We discussed them before with several cities. They don't have an issue because those are kind of like code required, and then we met all the codes and requirement. With a new station, it's much less than as an old station. The other condition is like, you are building a gas station within like 1.5 miles, within like 3 miles where there's like 8 gas stations in the area, and then that was another condition. Now my situation came, we ended up selling the property. They degraded the zoning, they changed the zoning after the fact, and they turned it to a B1. Mixed use, and then coming to that, like when we bought the property, it was a B3. A B3, it's like, the highest end of use. And then versus, like, when you get to the point where it is a B1, now you're kind of forced, like, there's nothing that you can do over there. And I'm not in that kind of a business, so I end up selling the property for a loss. And we stood down and we forgot about it. But basically what happened after the fact, after Sheetz came in and then they got approved on 9 Mile in Gresham, which is like about 1.5 miles from where I was building. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce kind of like got in touch with me, with Nasser here, and then they told me that there is a case over there like 1, 2, 3. And then I like that because I felt like, I'm kind of like left behind, and then they didn't care about me or what happened to me. And then, so I felt like it's a good stand to help the community and then to kind of move on forward with this case, because it's an important thing for us as a business owner in this, in our community here to succeed and then to continue the same thing, because this is our bread and butter for our children here. Yes, we are small business owners, and then Sheetz is coming with a big flag here, and then they're trying to dominate the area. But I feel like we have hope here. I mean, with MENA supporting this, I believe that standing behind you, we're gonna do a good job, and then let's stand all together on fighting Sheetz on coming and dominating in our community. Two things that I was rejected based on environmental, and then there's too many stations. They got approved, and they didn't care about their environmental issue. Neither they were, concerned about that, too many stations in the area. So this, where I feel, and Cindy is kind of like explained the situation to me, we feel together like this is a good case, and I think we should pursue it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on what Mr. Hammoud said, so this is a year before Sheetz was approved. The city of East Point said, this project is not harmonious with the existing character because there are 8 gas stations within a 3-mile stretch. 2 gas stations across the street. So the proposed use does not create a well-rounded, balanced, harmonious neighborhood. Yet, when Sheetz wanted to come on the same area, oh, it's fine, it's great, it's wonderful. So how can it be the same? How can it not, for Mr. Mahmood, not be a well-balanced, harmonious neighborhood, but for Sheetz, it's great, everything's perfect. If I read you all of these conditions, you'd all be furious hearing it, because none of these were considered when Sheetz was making its application.
Thank you, Ms. Victor, and thank you, Mr. Hamwood, for sharing your experience. As you all have just witnessed, we have a community member who has already suffered the consequences of having his Sheetz being opened or an attempt to open, which has undermined municipalities, even from our small business members. I'd like to take this time to open up the floor for any questions anyone may have directed towards our esteemed panelists. And yeah, we'd like to encourage opinions, we'd like to encourage conversation and discussion. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Any cases where Sheetz got stopped in Michigan?
Not yet. Sheetz has only been in Michigan, has only had the 1 store in Romulus open. So they're just starting here. Our time to try to stop them is now.
Madison Heights, they were rejected in Madison.
Oh, Madison, yes, they were rejected in Madison Heights. Yeah, there are communities that are turning them down.
I spoke to a friend today that he was able to stop him too, with lawyer in, I think Faye talked to him in Rochester Hill,
Yes.
and he was successful with that too.
Right,
So,
right. We just you have to be organized as those communities were to say this doesn't belong here.
Sorry, Faye, I'd like to open up the question to Mr. Muhammad Bassi.
Yes, I have a question regarding the products that they come up with, 88 octane. Are any of the fuel companies like ExxonMobil and Shell and Marathon, are they gonna come with this product as well so we can be competitive and on par with them? And who supplies them their fuel in Michigan?
Marathon supplies them.
Yeah, we know a little bit of a Marathon supply, but the unwritten rumor is that the other large corporations are gonna start offering what they view as competitive fuel. It's actually in the southeast where some other large corporations exist. It has forced some of the other local dealers to switch their fuel options for their carriers in order to compete with the large corporations like Sheetz.
The 88 octane.
Right, but some of the different fuel types that have been used across the country, if it comes in and it dominates the market, then it forces, everyone to remain competitive.
For the 88 octane, I had a thought that there is a company that's looking into that right now. I cannot say the name.
Sure.
We had a meeting, they're thinking about it, and it's probably if they succeed, there's a lot of things that they need to do before they get a supply.
Right.
So they're working on it.
The main part is the regulatory. They gotta get over the regulatory hump to make sure that fuel is, approved for sale and distribution in the area. And once those hurdles get cleared, then they just proceed.
The other issue with 88 octane is you have to have, the underground tanks have to have particular specifications and they have to be of a specific size in order for that gas station owner to supply 88 octane. So that's another disadvantage that existing gas station owners are at, because you're not gonna tear up the ground and rebuild underground tanks. That's a significant capital investment. So that's another tactic that they're using in order to underprice the competition by selling 88 octane fuel.
And that's the huge environmental risk, because anytime anybody has to even put a shovel in the ground to try and do anything to modify some of the tanks, that's a huge red flag for everybody involved, and it's very hard when the local operators have to even consider that to remain competitive.
well, now that, I'm loud enough for them. Well, now that since we know that Marathon's behind it, how come that most of our small dealers, our contract is tied to a volume that you have to come up with to meet your contract needs? So how come we're left alone as an individual fighting this big corporation, and now we're not supported by the big oil company who now has to come up with the same products who can compete with theirs, and they know those dealers, whether you know, I don't want to name it, some of them like mobile, let's say, I'm talking to people on EV, whatever, or Cisco, they're supposed to help us fighting these guys because we're gonna run out of business and now we're not like really complying with our contracts. So how come we left on fighting these guys?
Well, that goes to what I suggested, which was establishing collective purchasing power, because Sheetz comes in with a dozen, 2 dozen, up to 100, 200 locations. Now their purchasing power is so easy, they can go wherever they want and do their purchasing for their fuel. You as an individual owner or operator, or even a jobber that has, 7 or 8 locations, is never going to be able to even budge some of the big oil companies because you just don't have the cachet with them. You don't have the purchasing power. So organizing some of the jobberships, even if it means maintaining separate jobber relationships under some sort of a collective, where when you go to a mobile or you go to a marathon and buying fuel, you're not just buying for 7, 8 gas stations to then supply it down on the street. You're buying for 100 or 200 yourself. So you have a bigger seat, you have a bigger voice to compete with somebody that's coming in that has a supply of 200, 300, 400 stations and a new fuel type. Well, you can bargain for the same exact way if you're through a collective. It doesn't mean that you all own the same gas station or you all participate equally, but at least you're negotiating together. And organizing under a collective, negotiating together, you're able to push mobile and marathon for better prices. You're able to market for better products if new ones are going to force you to change what you have to sell. It gives you a seat at the table instead of just trying to fight them every individual location, time in and time again.
If I may, just one question, and I'm not a gas station owner, so I may just be ignorant to this, but is there an association for gas stations in like other markets, for example, that we can kind of look to see what they're doing, how they're fighting these types of conglomerates, and maybe it's something that the chamber thinks about doing, right? But just figure that's, to your point
Yeah.
that you were just mentioning, that's a good way to.
So there's 2 different ways to look at it. You have at the stage of planning and zoning and lawsuits to ensure fair treatment, you have organizations like various chambers of commerce that have critical resources and connections to make sure that at these local, like a zoning hearing or a planning commission meeting, that we have a good voice, strong representation, and we can fight individualized challenges there. But then on the business level, I'm talking about some sort of a group or a collective or organization that can have bargaining power, that can buy up a location that's for sale instead of Sheetz buying that location, that can negotiate fuel prices with the larger gas companies instead of doing it on a smaller station by station level. And those 2 areas I think are 2 separate considerations, but they're important ones because, no matter what we try to do, you can't just focus all of your challenges on that local level. At the end of the day, there's going to be some city council member that just wants that new development. They just want to be able to say, I brought this new development into this city. So then it's up to us as the actual business people, the actual people that are participating in the market to say, okay, well, can we compete? And maybe we can try to shut them down on the local level, but if we can compete on a big scale and we can compete with our collective resources, now that might be even more pressure to force them to go somewhere else.
Actually, no, Actually, I got 2 questions. First of all, you said collective, well, like with Marathon, with Marathon.
Sure.
But a lot of us, we have contract with Marathon, and usually 10 years, 15 years. You're actually gonna stay with the contract, big chances of change. And Marathon supplies, I was gonna say, thousands of gas stations in Michigan. I mean, we all get gas from Marathon, even other companies like Mobil, Soroka, they do get their gas sometimes from Marathon. So really, to go as one unity, we already have contract with Marathon, it's not gonna change. That's my first question.
Sure.
The second question is, any existing so-called, some cities they have, like ordinance, like we say, okay, we're saturated with gas stations, no more gas stations?
So I'll start with your first.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those are 2 very good questions. Your first question, yes, it's typical in the business. You have a 7, 10, 12, 15, 20-year supply agreement with your fuel suppliers, but usually you have that with the jobber. And if the jobber is negotiating your fuel prices with the jobber's 7, 8, 9, or 10 other stations, that's a lot different than if the jobber is negotiating 100 stations. And it's not just one jobber, it's 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So establishing that together, that gets you an easier way to negotiate with Marathon, not only for themselves as jobbers, but those savings are then passed on to you as the individual owner-operator. So even though you might just have one contract, if the person that's supplying you is negotiating on behalf of 100 contracts, those savings are eventually going to flow downstream, and you'll realize that in your contracts. You'll realize that over time as the incentives come out, the branding, the imaging, the rack price, all of these aspects, which a company like Sheetz, they can do whatever they want in the snap of a finger. But again, it's about collective bargaining power. If you're just 1 or 7 or 8, it's a lot different than a couple hundred. To answer your second question, there are several cities in Southeast Michigan that have various ordinances concerning setbacks for gas stations. City of Detroit, I actually have a case pending right now where there is a 1,000-foot setback against the gas station. So if you have a gas station on one side of the street, there can be another one within 1,000 feet of that development. And another important thing that really wasn't discussed today is, you can lobby some type of legislation for gas stations of a certain size that would dissuade a big corporation like Sheetz, because at the end of the day, Sheetz isn't coming in to build a small 1,000-foot gas station. They're coming in to build a huge operation that might even require like joining of parcels or some big pieces of real property. So in some of these communities, if the resources are put together, you can actually lobby for a change in the ordinance modeled off of something like the City of Detroit that says, they are going to disapprove and deny gas stations that are over a certain square footage footprint, and that could be successful.
Just one moment. Before we continue with questions from the audience, I'd just like to take an opportunity to invite the Wayne County Commissioner, Mr. Sam Baidoon, to give his input on legislation and things that we can achieve. Mr. Sam Baidoon.
Thank you. So I am the Wayne County Commissioner, but I'm standing in front of you as a real estate broker for over 3 decades. I'm going to put my real estate hat on. And my experience in selling gas stations, I know almost all of you in this room. I'm going to take it from the last part. What he just touched on is very crucial. We need to lobby with the local cities to change the ordinances, to change the requirements. For example, why do we have to have a 7,000 or 8,000 square foot building in a whole block, looks like an airport with a gas station with 20 or 18 nozzles, for example. That's the key. I served on a zoning board in the city of Dearborn, and I will tell you, one of the things that we look at when we're making a decision is when you see a room full of residents, people that you know that live in your community, that has a big impact on you when you're making a decision. It's very important whenever there's a case for Sheetz in any city. We have to get together, all of us, and we have to show up and voice our concerns. And then we can lobby with our friends in Lansing on making some changes. For example, I know for a while Detroit had a moratorium on gas stations. I don't think it's still the case yet.
No, I believe it's been lifted.
It's been
But
lifted.
it's subject to the ordinances about setback and some other.
Yeah, and you know what, hearing my friend's case here, Jay Hamoud, I'm really troubled when you have, I'm just gonna put it out there, it's a clear case of discrimination. So they see somebody, another Arab American coming in to open up another gas station. But when a big corporation shows up, it's just like they're gonna throw the red carpet for them, and there's, I'm not a legal expert, I'll leave that to you. There could be a big case of discrimination with a lot of these cities. So from my perspective as a real estate broker, and by the way, you look at all these people here, they help build our communities. You have a business owner, his son or daughter is gonna get married. They're gonna have a wedding in one of the banquet halls in our cities. They're gonna spend their money locally. They hire people from within the community. They sponsor the baseball teams and the football teams in your local cities. So they have a vested interest in seeing our community succeed. My friend here in Allen Park, I represent Allen Park on the Wayne County Commission. But there's a lot of gas stations on Southfield Road as it is. Now they wanna come in and they wanna put everyone out of business. Again, we're not against fair competition, but it seems like they're just coming in, they wanna put everyone out of business, and that's not the way to do it, and we have to be very vocal, we have to stand up. I'm glad to hear that they turned them down in Rochester Hills.
East Point.
East Point?
Madison Heights.
No, Madison Heights, so we gotta keep this going, and it's a collective effort. And if we come together and we have a plan a good plan that we can all follow, I think we will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We're gonna open up questions from the audience.
Yeah, about Circle K that I was, the guy saying that they're going out of business. They're not going out of business. The reason why they stopped building in Michigan because of the interest rate. They already acquiring a bunch of properties in Michigan, and they sit inside until the interest rates come down, they can start building it. And the next thing I would suggest all the business owners, you gotta improve your site. You gotta do better than what these guys are doing. When you show the city that you are better than these guys, the city will not approve them. But if you run in your store like 20 years ago, like the back old-fashioned way, everybody wants a new building, new concept, fresh made to go, fresh coffee. That's what their customers want right now. So I would suggest all the business owners improve better than what these guys doing. Then you go to the city and say you know what? Yeah, I'm giving what these guys offering in this community, I'm already doing it. So city will reject them. But let's say if you're not offering and they're telling the city, oh, listen, we're doing fresh to go. We're doing the Slurpees, we're doing lunch for customers, and we're doing all different things in the store. But mom and pop stores, they're not doing it. What they're doing is they just run in an old fashioned way. They need to improve. So when you improve your business and you go to the city, say, you know what, hey listen, she's Circle K, they're giving this, 7-Eleven's doing this, and I'm doing better than that. There's no way the city will approve them. That's the biggest problem. See, those guys that bring in a concept, they're showing something new. And you gotta be ahead of them. That's what I would suggest.
I don't believe that was a question, but I believe you made a very good statement, perhaps, that one of our esteemed panelists can emphasize on, perhaps.
Well, one of the things that we talked about when going to these meetings, and Commissioner Doon was very eloquent about that when you see residents at the meeting, come prepared. If you have done that, if you have spruced up your station and it's beautiful, and you have to bring pictures. Bring pictures and put them on boards and say, this is my business, and this is what I put money in, and you want to put me out of business. You need to humanize it for the people on the panel so they can see that it's not just like fancy schmancy Sheetz versus, some tacky gas station kind of in their mind. You want to tell them that this affects human lives. So personalize it, make it real, show them what you're doing. Bring that up to the municipalities.
Thank you. And I'd like to bring up Ms. We're back on the podium.
Thank you, Aya. I appreciate you. And thank you, Cindy, with the Victor Law Firm, and thank you, Tarek, with the Hlala Hamoud and Associates. And thank you for everyone for being here today, including the media, the gas station owners, and the fuel suppliers, and our counterparts who are simply here to support. What I want to close with is we heard a lot of different sentiments that were shared today. Some of them are from individuals that are directly impacted, and some are here to provide moral support. There are many planning commission meetings and council meetings that are upcoming, and it's very crucial to continue to show up, to continue to fill up those rooms, because I've talked to mayors, I've talked to council presidents, And when they see 40, 50 people in a room that are, talking in opposition of a agenda item, they do listen. They do take that into consideration. So your power is in your attendance, your power is in remaining engaged, your power is in remaining in those forums and communicating your concerns. So to close, we will be establishing a legal fund to pursue Jay Hamoud's case, the discrimination case that was outlined today. But more importantly, and as equally as important, not more importantly, but we also will be looking into the suggestion that was made by Tarek earlier regarding the ordinances, right? And Commissioner Baidoun had alluded to it as well. If we're able to modify the ordinances in a way, because right now in the city of Livonia, they refer to Sheetz as a truck stop. It's not your regular ordinary size gas station. It's a truck stop. It's a semi-truck stop. It's huge. We do have to combine multiple parcels in order to accommodate their type of business model. So if we're able to get the municipalities to sign on board, and if we start with one, let's say we start with the city of Dearborn, our own backyard, making sure that our council approves, they are potentially in favor of establishing a moratorium, and if we can also propose to them a ordinance change so that there's a limitation on the size of the gas station. That is something that we can work on collectively from a legislative standpoint. So again, I want to invite you to sign on to the legal fund and to continue to show up to planning meetings, to planning commission meetings and council meetings. If you're not able to attend, send representation, send individuals that can speak on your behalf. But it's very crucial now more than ever. They're still in the beginning stages, whether it's Sheetz or now we're learning about Circle K, resurfacing and coming back. These corporations are testing the waters, right? If Sheetz is successful, you're gonna have others by different names that are coming to the state of Michigan. And gas stations and fuel suppliers and the entire supply chain will no longer be a viable business. And is that what we want? That's like Jay mentioned earlier, that's the livelihood of a lot of individuals in the community. So thank you so much for attending today. I appreciate your time, and we'll continue to stay up. Did you? You are going to say one more thing. Okay, so we will provide you with updates on today's session, as well as how to remain engaged and how to sign on to the legal fund. And then I'll hand it over to Jay to give some final remarks.
Faye, thank you very much. I just want to mention, Faye mentioned something about my case. My case is done and I sold the property. All what I'm here for right now is just, I'm an example of a good case that, Cindy is going to present, to help all the communities.
A lot of losses too.
Yeah, so basically my case is not just, for me, it's for all and everybody. And then I'm just gonna leave that to Cindy to take care of that for all the community. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for coming out and saving me.